On the morning of May 16, 2008, a bank branch outside Manila sat completely silent before opening hours. No alarms had gone off, no neighbors had called in gunfire. When employees arriving for the morning shift finally got the doors open, they found 9 people lying on the floor in a row. A 10th would die 2 days later in a hospital bed. This is the deadliest bank robbery ever recorded, and the men responsible were never fully brought to justice. The branch belonged to Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, RCBC for short, one of the largest banks in the Philippines. This particular location sat inside the Laguna Industrial Science Park in Cabuyao, a town about an hour south of Manila. It was an ordinary branch in an ordinary industrial district, the kind of place nobody expects to become the site of the worst bank robbery in the country's history. When investigators arrived, the first thing that struck them was the silence. Nearby residents told police they hadn't heard a single gunshot that morning, which meant the killers had almost certainly used silencers, a level of preparation far beyond a panicked robbery gone wrong. The second thing investigators noticed was that there was no forced entry anywhere on the building. The front doors were locked exactly as they should have been. It was the back door that was found open. Whoever did this hadn't broken in that morning at all. The working theory became that they were already inside the building before dawn, waiting. What they found inside was methodical in the worst possible way. A security guard and 8 bank employees had been lined up and shot. A 9th victim, a client's representative who happened to be at the branch, was killed alongside them. A 10th bank official was found still breathing, critically wounded, and rushed to a hospital, but died from his injuries 2 days later. 8 of the victims were men, 2 were women. This wasn't a robbery where a teller got caught in a crossfire. This was almost the entire staff of a bank branch, executed in a row. Investigators recovered 17 spent shell casings from a .45 caliber pistol at the scene, along with ammunition consistent with an M16 rifle. The robbers walked away with 9 million pesos. To put the death toll in perspective, most bank robberies in modern history end without a single fatality. Even the most infamous violent bank robbery in American history, the 1997 North Hollywood shootout, a gun battle so intense that police fired over 1,000 rounds and had to borrow rifles from a nearby gun store just to match the robbers' firepower, ended with exactly 2 deaths, the 2 robbers themselves. The RCBC case had 10 victims, and as far as anyone could prove, not one of them fired back. The investigation that followed moved fast, at least on the surface. President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo personally ordered an immediate investigation into the killings. The Philippine National Police stood up a dedicated task force, simply named Task Force RCBC, and RCBC itself, along with several politicians, put up bounties for information leading to arrests, but investigators had almost nothing to work with. There were no eyewitnesses left alive inside the bank to describe what happened. Progress depended entirely on informants, forensic evidence, and old-fashioned pressure on the criminal underworld. That pressure eventually pointed toward a group known as the Ampang Colango Robbery Group, led by a career criminal named Herbert Ampang Colango. Several men were named as suspects, accused of planning and carrying out the massacre together. But before most of them ever saw the inside of a courtroom, the case took a darker turn. Just 6 days after the massacre, on May 22nd, police tracked 3 of the named suspects to their homes in the town of Tanawan, in nearby Batangas province. All 3 men were killed in shootouts with police at their residences. On paper, it looked like swift justice, but it also meant 3 of the people who might have explained exactly what happened inside that bank were dead before they could ever be questioned in open court, and the manner of their deaths raised uncomfortable questions of its own. Later that year, lawyers representing the suspects' families filed murder complaints against 38 police officers involved in the operation, citing findings from the Commission on Human Rights that suggested the killings may not have been the clean self-defense shootouts they were reported as. The remaining suspects who did face formal charges included a man accused of acting as lookout, a getaway driver, and others tied to the planning, but the full picture of who ordered the executions inside that bank and why the staff was killed so completely rather than simply robbed was never fully settled in a courtroom. What should have been a clear-cut case, backed by forensic evidence, a task force, presidential attention, and public bounties ended instead in a tangle of dead suspects, human rights complaints against the very officers who caught them, and a set of unanswered questions about what actually happened in the days after May 16th. What makes this case remarkable isn't just the death toll, though 10 deaths in a single robbery has never been matched before or since. It's the calculation behind it. Silencers suggest planning, not panic. An unforced backdoor suggests inside knowledge or hours of preparation, not opportunity. Lining up 9 people to be shot, rather than simply forcing open a vault, suggests the goal was never just the 9 million pesos. It was making absolutely sure nobody survived to describe who had been in that room. Most criminals who rob a bank are trying to get away with money. Whoever planned the RCBC robbery was trying to get away with a perfect crime, and for the most part, they did. Nearly 2 decades later, the full truth of what happened inside that branch before the sun came up still hasn't been told in any courtroom by anyone who was actually there.